morning, good afternoon, good evening. One of the beauties of a healthy and functioning democratic system is that reason is allowed to prevail. That when push comes to shove, the truth is allowed to come out. And one of the negative sides of a dysfunctional political system like ours in Zimbabwe is that reason is not allowed to prevail. We have got what the Greeks would call the tribalistic mentality, where loyalty to the tribe is more important than the truth, than reality. Here is an instance where a Republican governor is coming out right and calling President Trump a thug. Of course, President Trump is a thug. There is all the evidence to say that he is a thug. And so why shouldn't he be called a thug? But that would not happen in our dysfunctional political system in Zimbabwe. Just listen to this.
Brian Kemp has forgotten more about being a Republican than Donald Trump knows about being a Republican. Brad Raffensperger and myself included, we have done more for the conservative cause than Donald Trump has ever done. This is now starting to not be Donald Trump's problem. This is starting to be the Republican Party's problem. We have to call him out for what he is. He's a felonious thug who walks down the street, throws sucker punches at people like Brian Kemp, like African-American journalists, like John McCain, and the list goes on and on and on again. And the Republican Party is content sitting across the street, watching it happen and not calling him out, not jumping into that fight and saying, you are wrong for us. This 10% in the middle, which now feels like it's growing to be bigger than 10% in the middle, that's going to decide this election, are paying attention. And I've never seen a human be more self-destructive than Donald Trump the last 2 weeks. He continues to do it over and over and over again. And when he loses, and the Republican Party finally catches their breath and wakes up and says, we need a GOP 2.0, there'll be some people around, but it's going to take time to fix. My hope is that Kamala Harris ends up being a blank canvas for us to be able to help work these new policies and new ideas into place. That's the risk I'm taking as a Republican voting for Kamala Harris.
In Zimbabwe, we have had 44 years of rigged elections. We have not had the guts to come out and saying, why is this happening? Why do we keep repeating the same mistake over and over again? If the truth be told, the last 24 years, Zanu PF has rigged elections with the connivance of MDC-CCC. What some people have failed to understand is that Zanu PF cannot reform itself out of office. This most people accepted by the late 1990s. The choice was simple. It's either we take up arms again and have another armed struggle to remove Zanu PF from office, or we elect an opposition and give them the primary task of implementing the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. The nation chose the latter course. MDC, when it was launched in 1999, was riding on that wave. They called their party the Movement for Democratic Change, promising that they will deliver the democratic changes the nation was dying for. 24 years down the line, what we have failed to do in those 24 years is to ask, why is it that Zanu PF has been able to continue to rig elections? And to be quite honest, there were many chances for the democratic reforms to be implemented. The best chance were during the 2008 to 2013 GNU, and yet not even a token reform was implemented. And that is where our problem is. We have failed to say MDC, CCC have failed to implement reforms. And we have failed to call them out for their failure. And not only have they failed to implement even a token reform in that period, they have continued to participate in flawed elections, knowing fully well that they are flawed and that participating would give Zanu PF. Don't listen to me. Here is a quotation from David Coulthard saying exactly that. My apologies. Let me find the quotation. The most important part of that quotation is that David Coulthard acknowledged that the 2013 election process was so flawed, so illegal, the logical step was to withdraw. Why did he fail to withdraw? Well, he admits it there. He couldn't withdraw because he feared that the other half of the MDC, the MDCT, would participate in the election and win the gravy train seats on offer. In other words, he and his friends continued participating in these flawed elections out of greed. Why that has been a big issue, why people have failed to understand that, beggars belief. The MDC guys had the golden opportunity to implement reforms. That has been at the heart of it. The fact that Zanu PF has been rigging the elections, the primary reason for it is because no token reforms have been implemented. Many of them opposition leaders, if you ask them that question directly, they will avoid answering it. A few have done so. And here is what Atham Tambara said on the matter. He readily admitted that as a collective political leadership, we should have taken the time to apply our minds to the question of what next after the GNU. And they admit that they did not. And that was suicidal. He did not want to explain why they did not address that issue. But I'm sure that if he was to address it, he would tell you Mugabe had bribed them with the trappings of high office. And they were so occupied with enjoying themselves, they forgot about the reforms. And so the country has found itself in this untenable situation where we have continued to participate in flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating we give Zanu PF legitimacy. But the opposition leaders themselves have encouraged their members to participate, knowing that they would get those few gravy train seats. Meanwhile, their members were ignorant of the real reason behind. The participation was greed. The ease with which the opposition leaders have conned the people of Zimbabwe is something to behold. In 2018, Nelson Chamisa told his supporters that he had stringent measures to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And so the party was going to win. He has been telling lies like that again and again, and the people have believed him. In 2018, one of the lies he told these people was that President Trump had promised him that if he won the elections, the Americans would pay him $15 billion to get the economy going again. This was a lie. And here is a clip where the BBC took Nelson Chamisa to task on that very issue.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza naye akomana.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election, $15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
I think this issue of the opposition having failed to deliver on the mandate to implement democratic reforms, to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, is an issue that must be put on the table and addressed honestly. The number of people, 2 million, who participated in last year's flawed elections and ended up giving Zanu PF legitimacy, were on the back of the belief of Nelson Chamisa's lie that he had plugged the vote rigging loophole. The danger is he will repeat that lie come 2028. And those people are gullible and naive enough to believe in it, in another lie. The challenge for Zimbabwe is to stop this madness of 44 years of rigged elections. And we can stop it. Only way, and the only sure way to do so, is to make sure that people open their eyes and are honest enough to say Chamisa lied, Chamisa and company have failed to implement democratic reforms, and all these lies about ways of winning rigged elections is what it is, lies. And we must call it for what it is. I think it is unforgivable that we should be looking at 44 years of rigged elections. And it is in our power to stop, to end this madness. And we fail to do so. Just because of the tribalistic mentality, this Chamisa Chete Chete personality cult mentality that stops us acknowledging the facts on the ground. The number of people who have refused to accept that Chamisa lied is absolutely amazing. On the one hand, they refused to accept that he lied, that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. And on the other hand, they are the ones who are saying, yes, Zanu PF rigged 2023 elections. How could they have rigged if he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, as he said? I think we have got to grow up as a nation and realize that this almost fanatical support of a party or an individual to the point of denying reality is counterproductive, to say the least. After 24 years, we have got to acknowledge that MDC CCC have failed to deliver the democratic changes we needed to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And after acknowledging that, realize that we cannot keep on participating in flawed elections on the back of some MDC lie that they've got vote rigging strategies, only to end up giving Zanu PF legitimacy. I believe the number one task before this nation is to make sure that 2028 elections are not a repeat of the last 44 years of rigged elections. We can't stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. We cannot stop Chamisa and company participating in all the elections because they've got their own agenda. But what we can do is stop participating to give the process legitimacy, to give Zanu PF legitimacy, to perpetuate the dictatorship. That should be common sense. That should be calling a spade a spade. And in our case, indeed, calling a bloody shovel a bloody shovel. We cannot deny that MDC, CCC have helped to keep Zanu PF in power the last 24 years. It is up to us to stop being so naive and gullible to let this madness continue. It is within our power to stop it, and we must stop it. Thank you, and have a good day.